All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been going through and creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series, and I've gone through the getting started with the web and the HTML structuring the web, and I'm into the third part, which is talking about CSS. We're up to the second of 4 modules in CSS, and this is talking about CSS Building Blocks. And as you can see up on the screen here, it says this module carries on where the first one left off. So now that we have a familiarity, we're going to do a deeper dive, so to speak. The module looks at Cascade and Inheritance, the selector types that are available, units, sizing, styling backgrounds, borders, debugging, and more. Now, again, I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it, and that is that please do not think that just by going through all this stuff that you will become an expert on CSS. That really and truly is not how it works. All right, but that said, you should have a pretty good understanding and be up to about beginner to / intermediate level once we finish this. So the aim, as it said, is to provide you with a toolkit for writing competent CSS and help you understand the essential theory before we go on to the next 2 modules, which are text styling with CSS and CSS layout. So as you can see, what we have in here for lessons, we're going to start with Cascade and Inheritance, and as it says, the aim of this lesson is to develop your understanding of some of the most fundamental concepts of CSS. Cascade, specificity, and inheritance. We've talked about these before, but we're going to talk about them again and in more depth and breadth of coverage than we did previously. From there, we'll go on into CSS selectors. Now, we've talked about class selectors already, but now we'll get into ID selectors, attribute selectors, more on some of the pseudo type of selectors, and even more on the combinators. From there, we'll go on to the box model, and as they mention here, everything in CSS is inside of a box. It's not a visible box, but the idea is everything that you put in there that you put in for content has around it margin, and around that margin has a border, and around that border has some padding. So we'll take a look at all that and see what it means. From there, we go on to backgrounds and borders and talk about things like how to add gradients, background images, and a few other things. Handling different text directions. Well, here in the United States, we read from left to right, top to bottom, and left to right. Now, there are people in other countries who read right to left instead of left to right, so we'll talk about that. And we'll go into a very important concept, one called overflow. And overflow, I'd like to describe that as the old act of what happens when you try to stuff 10 pounds worth into a 5-pound bag type of an idea. From there, we'll go on and talk about CSS values and units, and we'll talk about things like ems and rems and points and pixels, etc. Sizing items in CSS, and then bringing CSS in to be able to use it with images, forms, media elements, etc. How to style tables, how to debug using CSS, and organizing your CSS. And after that, we'll have a couple different assessments with that. We'll look at that and see how many, if any, of those we'll go over when we get to that point. And that'll be it for this particular section. So in just a couple minutes, I'm going to go over the building blocks overview. Maybe that's what we just did. I guess that is what we just did. All right. So we have gone over then the building blocks overview. So when I come back, we will jump into talking about Cascade and Inheritance. And I'll see you with that in just a couple minutes.